Hello, everyone. It is 12 o'clock Eastern, so I'm going to get started. Thank you so much for coming to the latest Worth Publishers TLC Symposium, Shaping Psychology Skills into Career Skills, featuring Deborah Licht and Misty of Pikes Peak Community College. Both Professors Licht and Hull are professors and co-chairs of the Department of Psychology at Pikes Peak Community College in Colorado Springs. Deborah has had over 2 decades of teaching and research experience in a variety of settings. She has experience in traditional, online, and hybrid courses and is particularly inspired by first-generation college students who turn to community colleges to pursue their education. Misty has taught a range of psychology courses in a variety of delivery formats, again, traditional, online, and hybrid. Her love of teaching comes through in her dedication to mentoring new and part-time faculty in the teaching of psychology. Professors Licht and Hull, together with Coco Ballantyne, are co-authors of the new Introduction to Psychology book, Scientific American Psychology. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items, and then we will turn it over to Misty and Deborah. I do have everybody muted on arrival, so if you do have any questions for us, you can either type your question into the chat box, or you can raise your hand if you want us to take you off of mute so you can ask the question yourself. We will be taking the questions at the end of the session, so I will keep track of any questions that you type, or I'll keep track of if you raised your hand. Also during the presentation, there will be one poll. You'll be able to, this box will appear on your screen. You'll be able to answer it and click submit. When it closes, you'll be able to see all the results, and then you'll just click X to close it from your screen. So now I am going to turn over the presentation to Deborah Licht and Misty Hull.
Thank you, Andrea. And this is Deb speaking right now. Misty and I are using the same computer, so we'll try to let you know who's talking. I want to start by thanking Andrea and Worth Publishers for providing us with this chance to think about and discuss this important topic of how can we help students use psychology content to support them in their careers and lives in general. As full-time faculty and co-chairs of our psychology department, Misty and I think about this topic in our role as instructors as well as mentors to our adjunct faculty. So if I want Misty to just introduce herself, you can hear her voice, and then she's going to explain what we'll be doing today.
Good morning, everyone. Because we know most of the students who sit in our introductory psychology classes will never be in a psychological career, we want to be able to connect the content to everyday life. So today we hope to give you a few ideas of how to bring this content to life in both the classroom setting as well as online settings. In addition, we will discuss the importance of assessment and how to use this to provide feedback to the instructor and the student alike. So to begin, we would like to ask that each of you respond to a quick
Deborah, it looks like you have muted yourself.
Can you hear us now, Andrea?
All right, so you guys have exactly the same kind of breakdown of people in the classroom that are psychology majors as we do. As you can see, most of us have on the lower end of students who are actual psych majors.
Okay, so to get rid of your poll box, you can just click on that little X in the corner. So what this informal poll indicates is something that really most of us know. Students in our introductory psychology class may never step foot in a psychology class again. And even that small proportion of students in our introductory psychology classes who are psych majors, few of them will go on to be in the field, to work in the field of psychology. So if we have estimates of almost 2 million students enrolling in introductory psychology classes, it tells us that a much smaller proportion are actually going to get bachelor's degrees. We can see in 2008, 90,000 students earned bachelor's degrees in psychology. And again, this doesn't even indicate how many have entered the field of psychology. At our community college, we also have students who are taking introductory psychology because they need it as a prerequisite to a required course. For example, we have pre-nursing students who have to take our intro psych class before they can take our 200-level lifespan development class, which is required for their degree. Many of these students see the intro psych class as a barrier to what they really want to be doing. So introductory psychology course really represents a variety of experience to a wide range of students. But for each student that comes into our classroom, we have an important opportunity to educate them regardless of where they'll be heading, particularly those who never are going to take a psychology course again. I know anecdotally, I've heard so many times, and probably you have as well, that adults say, oh yeah, I took an intro psych course in college, and I remember a particular concept or one particular study that was interesting to them. So reaching all these students is an important goal for us as well as for the APA laid out in the new guidelines, and in particular, the importance of promoting psychology as a science and emphasizing the skill set that psychology contributes to. So we're going to start by looking at the new guidelines, and these are the guidelines 2.0 for undergraduate psychology. These were created by the APA, and their goal was to allow us to articulate our expectations that we hope students will achieve in psychology as a liberal arts program. And although the guidelines don't focus on introductory psychology classes, they certainly can help us structure our expectations for students who are taking their first class in psychology. So we'll look at each of these goals briefly and see how they fit with an introductory psychology class. And then a little later, we'll get into more depth with a few of these goals and sub-goals. So the first goal is to demonstrate a knowledge base in psychology. And certainly, introductory psychology students can work towards this goal. The second goal is to develop a scientific inquiry and critical thinking. And really, for any class, we hope that this is what's going to happen, but particularly in the introductory psychology class, we're laying the groundwork for students' ability to use psychological science to do this. The third goal is the development of ethical and social responsibility in a diverse world. And again, introductory psychology classes can do this through examples in class that we offer, as well as the assigned reading that students have. The fourth goal is the development of communication skills, and in courses, introductory psychology courses, we can do this through papers, presentations, and class discussions. And then finally, the fifth goal is to support professional development. And this is an important focus with its emphasis on workforce preparation. Students can demonstrate significant naivete and entitlement in the workplace, and hopefully we can help students be better prepared for the work world. One other important distinction in the new guidelines is that the APA recognizes that not all faculty will work in four-year bachelor's programs in psychology. So there are foundational indicators to help with the articulation between 2- and 4-year programs. And these foundational indicators can also help us see how introductory psychology classes can be used to reach these goals as well. So one of the important aspects of the new guidelines that we want to emphasize here is that we should be trying to connect the content of psychology to our students' everyday lives. So for example, goal 1.3a urges us to make the content relevant with practical application of principles to everyday life. The idea of helping students find relevance was emphasized by Roberson in her 2013 article. She notes how relevant content is easier to learn. So relevant content is, quote, something that is interesting and worth knowing. And she suggests the relevance helps students make sense of their world. We won't have to worry about engagement if students find the information relevant. It will increase their engagement if they know the material is worth knowing, and we won't have trouble holding their attention if they see how it's relevant to them in particular. So Roberson suggests there are two ways that we can provide relevance. One is that we need to show students what the utility value is of this information. In other words, they have to see what value the content has for their future goals. We need to show them how the content can help them. She also says relatedness helps provide relevance. If students ask, what does this have to do with me, we should be able to relate it to their lives. And this can be done in part through their feeling of connection with instructors. If they have relationships with us or feel connected to us, this will increase their interest in the content, and we can show them how the content is worth knowing. We could do a whole nother webinar, of course, on how to develop relationships with students, but maintain appropriate boundaries, and so something always to keep in mind. The other thing Roberson suggests is, the APA goal 1.3b suggests is that we should use psychology to help students support the pursuit of a healthy lifestyle. So this is an example of a goal we can focus on to help students connect to their everyday lives. So what better practical application than to help them live healthier? For example, we often talk with our students about how to use learning principles to help them change their habits and those of others in their lives. And then finally, the critical thinking across all classes. Again, this is APA Goal 2, with this goal is easily incorporated into introductory psychology classes. This just gives you an idea. This is a breakdown of Goal 2.2. We just wanted to point out here again that the APA guidelines recognize that we need to sometimes focus on the foundational courses. So the left column represents the goals for foundational courses, and the right column represents the same goals from the perspective of the bachelor's degree in psychology. So if we look at the first row there, the foundational is read and summarize general ideas and conclusions, and then that would be for students perhaps in an introductory psychology class. And then the right column goes into complex ideas, summarizing them accurately, and also future direction from psychological sources and research. So what are psychologically literate citizens? And how can we describe them? Well, according to Goldstein and the APA, psychologically literate citizens can see links between psychology findings and their everyday lives. They're good consumers of information about psychology findings that are presented in the media, and they're able to see connections between concepts from class and relevant to everyday life. And all these connections will help them be engaged in the material, retain information as they see the relevance to their own lives. So we're going to ask you to think for a minute, and if you could go to your chat box, and Andrea showed you where that was at the beginning, open up your chat box, and what we'd like to ask you is, what do you do in your classes to connect psychology content to your students' lives? So again, if you could go to your chat box and just write an example of what you do to connect the psychology to your students' lives. And then, Misty, are you going to be able to read that for us?
If anybody doesn't see a chat box, just hover over the top of your screen where it says Viewing Deborah Licht Desktop, and then there's an icon for chat.
All right, so Mark, he actually said that he uses examples by asking things, why do you react negatively to the sound of a dentist drill? That's a great one. In my class, I use the example of why I react negatively when I get on an airplane. So those are always very scary. So he's saying that we're applying concepts from the memory and learning chapters to studying for college courses. So a lot of you guys are actually privately messaging Andrea So if you could be sure that you are sending that information to either Deborah or me, then we can actually relate this information. So we have another one here about having them write short reflective or reaction papers on topics that connect to things going on in the world around them. So films and psychology topics, news items, and magazine ads. These are all really great examples. Also using different writing assignments. We're seeing a lot of those from you guys right now. So I think these are excellent ideas.
So, and then if we could just think in a broader way about, is there anything in an introductory psychology textbook that can't be connected to their everyday life? In other words, if you think about the introductory psychology course, it seems like it is possible to help students make these connections and find the relevance in the content. So can you think of topics that would be harder perhaps to make relevant to students, or that you have found have been harder to make relevant to students?
So just type that into the chat box right now. Are there concepts or topics in your introductory psych classes that you find more challenging to make relevant? Severe mental illness is an excellent example that people have a lot of conceptual ideas and they think they know a lot about severe mental illness a lot of times because of what they see in popular culture. So I absolutely agree that that can be a challenge to make more relevant, because what they're actually pulling from is pop media. And some workplace issues, another person has indicated here. And then also some brain and behavior. That content can be challenging, as well as initially we find some struggle with the research methods class. So we hope today to give you some ideas of ways that you can connect this information to everyday life and making that introductory content more relevant.
Okay, so we're going to show you two very short clips, and the sound is going to come from our computer, so we hope it will come through to you.
So as you're watching this video, what we'd like for you to do is to count the number of changes that you see occurring in this SpongeBob clip. It's going to be very short.
Hello? Sorry, sir, we're closed. Ahoy there, Krusty Krab. How can I help you? Pizza. Of course we have pizza. Mr. Krab, every switch will bring it right over. Mr. Krab, we don't serve pizza. We don't deliver. We don't deliver. But you do.
Okay, so that was SpongeBob. Now we're going to show you Caillou. So try to count the number of changes that you see occurring in Caillou.
Excuse me, ladies, but could we take your picture?
Why, of course.
Say cheese.
Cheese. Caillou felt very proud. He liked taking pictures a lot.
I got him this time.
You sure did. Those are great pictures, Caillou, but I think you need one more.
Caillou had a nice picture of everyone in the family alone, but Daddy thought it would be nice to have a picture of the whole family together.
All right, so how many changes did you see there between the two? Were they similar? Were they different? Were they the same? In order to help our students use scientific reasoning, for example, to interpret psychological phenomena and meet the APA Goal 2.1, we bring practical hands-on exercises into the classroom. So much like what we just showed you here, we want to teach our students to be good consumers of information. So this type of exercise really highlights for the student how relevant this information actually is. So we would begin by presenting some of these headlines that we saw in the news. So the New York Times said, "Is SpongeBob SquarePants bad for children?" Or U.S. News said SpongeBob may impair kids' focus. Or CBC News said SpongeBob may impair 4-year-olds' brains. And so your students may have similar reactions to these headlines as our students do. They say things like, I always hated SpongeBob, or I'm never going to let my kids watch that show. And then we show them these clips like we showed you, and we ask them to count those changes. And, you know, after the students have watched these videos, and for us, we would show much longer clips, usually about 2 minutes a piece. And we hand out the actual journal article from Literate and Peterson in 2011 that would actually highlight this research that was presented. And then we ask the students to identify the independent and dependent variables. We discuss with them differences between experimental and correlational research, which at Pikes Peak Community College, we found that by doing our departmental assessments, that this was a concept that students really struggled with. And after several semesters of administering curriculum enhancements, much like this one, we're actually seeing a positive impact on students' understanding of these differences. So we would spend some time talking about the limitations of the study and ways to improve on the research, and then we would end the exercise by talking about what it means to be a good consumer of psychological research findings and not blindly accepting what we read or hear in the headlines. And so in addition to meeting the APA goal 2 to demonstrate psychological information literacy, we are also able to connect this to the APA goal 1.3 that suggests that we describe applications of psychology. So specifically describing examples of relevant and practical applications of psychological principles to everyday life. So this is just one type of example. I'm sure many of you do things like this based upon what we saw in your chat box. But this is just a very quick and correct way, I think, of bringing information to be relevant to students. Everybody has talked about SpongeBob, or they're familiar with cartoons like Caillou. And so this really helps bring relevant information literacy to the psychology student.
Okay, so now we've reached our second objective for our webinar today. And again, from our perspective at the community college at least, few of our students are going to be heading towards a career in psychology, but there's much we can do to link the content to their career goals and help them practice some really important skills. So we're going to open up the chat box again, or ask you to go to your chat box, and ask you, what do you do to help your students reach their career goals? So again, the question is, how do you use content to help your students reach career goals? So, for example, at our college, we have a lot of culinary arts students, and so we try to help them with some, we have a very basic introductory psychology class that we use for the career tech, for their career tech track. And I can see Catherine is saying study strategies, for example, the testing effect. Oh, this is going very fast now. Misty, can you follow
yeah.
Hard to read.
Well, and I like what somebody's saying here, to ask them in the syllabus acknowledgement form on the things that they can project their career in ways on their semester. During the semester, they want to remember that they have a lot of multiple business students or medical students or educational students, and so this person uses the examples as much as she can or he can for their examples in the classroom. That's a really excellent way to connect this material. Using child development information for teachers specifically in the classroom, or information specifically for nursing students. So these are all excellent ideas.
Okay, or asking questions about the type of work environments they're desiring and looking at personality types with certain jobs. A full month on Chapter 1 discussing critical thinking. Those are skills, of course, that they'll need in everyday life. These are all great examples, and we're hoping that, Andrew, we can capture these chat box suggestions so that we can look at them more carefully. Right, students in the class are asked to write reflections on their work and how it impacts their daily lives and career goals. Yeah, so excellent. Thanks, Andrea. We'll send that. So we can look at this APA Goal 5.1 here, is specifically this example of selective attention is a concept that's already interesting to students. Students are fascinated, for example, by nicer studies on the woman with the umbrella walking through, nobody knowing. So we've captured their attention with this, and we can take it a step farther then and try to tie it to workforce preparation. We know that multitasking can interfere with selective attention, and we can discuss this with students, how hard it is to study, for example, while trying to multitask. But probably more importantly, we can show them some examples of how it can interfere with their ability to study. So Misty's going to ask you to do a little multitasking.
All right, here. So you guys have to promise to all do it right now. So wherever you're at, stand up. Everybody stand up. Okay, make sure that there's not anything to trip you up while you're standing. And what I'd like for you each to do right now is to stand on one foot. All right, now close your eyes and recite Mary Had a Little Lamb. Now, I learned in class the other day that not everybody remembers this little limerick, so I'll say it with you. Mary had a little lamb, a little lamb, a little lamb. Mary had a little lamb, its fleece was white as snow. And everywhere that Mary went, Mary went, everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go. And so what you'll find is some of you have difficulty reciting, closing your eyes, and standing on one foot. You may find yourself tipping over. It's a little challenging to do all these tasks at once.
So that was an example that Misty's used to introduce the idea to students about the problems with multitasking and the ability to concentrate. We can also talk to students about how using Facebook while they're studying can interfere, or texting people can interfere. But when we give them research information, for example, Junko and Cotton, who show that there's a correlation between Facebook usage and GPAs, a negative correlation, this gets students' attention so that they maybe think twice about trying to multitask while studying. So, okay, so again, multitasking, we can talk about these different studies. For example, a study by Orr and colleagues they used technology, scanning technology, and they had students look at two digits, and they were told if both are red, for example, they were to decide which of the two digits was numerically larger, and or if the two digits were green, they were to decide which of the two digits was larger in font size. And again, we can describe this to students, but what we would like to do is give them some practice at trying to multitask. And so we're going to leave our PowerPoint for a second, and we're going to go to a multitasking task. And we will put this in this link in your chat box, so if you want to try it along with us. And if you try it for the first time, you might have to wait through some ads, but we're going to go ahead and show you how this works. So first thing to do is you click on the ball, and then you have to keep the ball on the bar. And this seems easy enough. Well, sort of.
I want to let the ball fall over. And here in just a few minutes, Deb's going to have another task to do.
Now I have to do both up and down and left and right, and I'm not very good at this. Oh dear. So I have to keep both of these bars in mind. And so when students try this for the first time, they're as bad as I am. So hopefully this gives them a real opportunity to try a multitask in a safe setting.
And they learn very quickly how inefficient they are at multitasking. So one example that we also see in APA Goal 4.3 is interacting effectively with others. And so we want to have the students work together to complete an activity, much like we'll show you here. This is an activity which highlights how remarkably bad most people are at spotting a fake smile. So we're going to take you again over to another screen, and you'll see here what I want you to do is go to your chat box, and I'm going to play this video of this gentleman smiling. There will be 4 or 5 of these, so you'll all get a chance to try. And so what you'll want to do is write in the chat box a G for genuine or an F for fake. And we're going to see how well you guys are at spotting a genuine or fake smile. All right, I'm going to play the first one. Everybody ready? Here we go. Okay, go ahead. Is that a fake smile or a genuine smile? Okay, I'm getting several genuine. Okay, we'll select genuine, and you would be correct. That one was a genuine smile. All right, here's the next one. See this young man here? Going to go ahead and hit play, and you can watch. Okay, this young man, what do you think? Is that a genuine smile or a fake smile? Okay, I'm getting a split here. Okay, I'm seeing more fake than genuine, but I will tell you that this young man was a genuine smile. All right, how about this young woman here? Here we go, I'm going to press play. Watch carefully. Is this a genuine or a fake smile? All right, a lot of you are saying fake. That is correct. This one was a fake smile. And then this young man, what do you think about him? Ready? Here we go. I'm going to hit play. Watch carefully. Genuine or fake? Okay, we're getting a lot of splits here. But those of you who said genuine, you would be correct. This is a genuine smile. All right, and let's look at our last young man here. All right, I'm going to hit play. Here we go. Genuine or fake? All right, most of you are saying fake, and you would be correct. Excellent. All right, so you will see that, we'll get back to our PowerPoint here, that this particular exercise could be done in teams, it could be done in small groups, it could be done in pairs, but we would use this exercise to talk about the importance of interacting effectively with others. We get to emphasize that teamwork isn't just about getting along with other people, but it also means reading others and knowing how and when to approach your coworkers, supervisors, or even your instructors. I have a student this semester who has never been taught this particular skill. He approaches me in the middle of lecture and at other inappropriate times. And so teaching the introductory psychology students often means we have to teach even these basic skills of interacting effectively with one another. So we would like to demonstrate another exercise that we can use to enhance teamwork. This can also be done in the classroom or an online discussion board. We're going to need a couple of volunteers, however. And so if you are willing to participate in this activity, if you would just go to your chat box, you can hover over the desktop and click on the participants button. And if you're willing to participate, please raise your hand and again, select that participants button in the lower right-hand corner. Click the raise your hand option, and that will help us get a sense of who would be willing to let us unmute them to participate in this particular activity. Okay, Jen Dyer Seymour, I'm going to unmute you. All right, hi Jen, are you there?
Hi, yes, I'm here.
Hi, Jen. Thanks for participating. And do
Sure.
I have one more who's willing to help us out? We need one more brave soul. Nobody's brave enough. Oh, dear. We promise this is painless. Oh, good. All right, Catherine, thank you. I'm going to unmute you now. All right, Catherine, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. All right, excellent. Okay, so I'd like for you and Jen to work together quickly. The question is, if you could ask just one question to discover a person's suitability for being a babysitter, what would your question be? So you guys need to come up with just one question together as a team, and we would then decide, you're going to decide what your one question will be. So go ahead, you two can talk together.
All right, so what do you think that it should start with? Should it be about safety or knowledge?
What's the first word you said? Something or knowledge?
Safety. So perhaps first aid training.
The first thing I thought about was caring.
Sure. Okay. So caring.
So that's good that you thought of safety, though. Caring, safety, or knowledge. Those are good choices. What do you feel like?
Well, I mean, as a kid, I was a good babysitter, and I didn't necessarily have any first aid training, but I did care for kids and have, some basic knowledge of, something goes wrong, who do I call?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure safety is necessarily the first piece. Pretty sure people with first aid aren't good necessarily.
All right, guys, we're gonna give you 30 more seconds, and you need to ask your question.
Oh goodness. All right. So caring.
Yeah, I like caring because I feel like a lot of other things they may not have had. If they at least have caring, they will sort of put the child first and try and figure out, how to help them. So
but how do we ask that? How do we ask about it?
Oh, that's tough. I think I would ask them for a sort of a example of a time when you showed a lot of caring to a young child or a sibling or something like that.
Awesome.
Okay, all right, you guys, thank you so much. So you guys can see this is just one quick example of ways that we could use an activity to break the ice with the groups or with pairs, asking them to come up with this question. You could also deploy this in a discussion board if you're doing an online class. We could have done this as a chat together today. Everybody could have been working together. There's not a right answer here, obviously, but really what we are doing is looking specifically at ways that we can get the students working together to really emphasize this goal of enhancing teamwork.
All right, so if we look at sub-goal 5.5, and this is another example how we can incorporate skill practice into the introductory psychology course. So develop meaningful professional direction, and some topics that we might do is we might talk about what happens when you start in a new job. What's the difference between people testing versus people teasing? Or anger management, not just of somebody who is employed, but customers. We can talk about customer service. Students are very interested in the catharsis hypothesis and how research shows that it's not necessarily the best way to deal with anger through catharsis. And we can also do some role playing with interview techniques, and the possibility of having students pair off to role play any of these different kinds of scenarios. We have a really basic, again, a basic introductory psychology course for our career tech students. And what we do with them is that we arrange for them to do mock interviews with faculty and administrators across the college. So Misty or I will ask our colleagues if they're willing to spend 30 minutes with these students to give them some practice in how to present themselves in an interview situation. And we could try that here, but I think we're probably going to move on. But if we had time, what we might do online is have two volunteers, and one could be the interviewer and the other the interviewee, and we could listen to how they interact in this kind of role play. And we should say that both Misty and I have quite a bit of experience online, and that any of these we can, any of these practice things we can do online in different ways, depending on whether you have synchronous or asynchronous courses. Might be a little more challenging, but certainly they can be developed for online classes as well.
Okay, so we're going to transition just for a little bit, and we're going to talk just for a second about using the assessment to make sure that we are including these goals as outlined by the APA guidelines. When we assess students, we want students to understand that they actually have a purpose. We're not assessing for the basic sake of assessing students, right? They feel like they need to feel like their responses in assessment make a difference. And so again, I'd like for you guys to just go to the chat box right now, and I want you to name one thing that you're going to take away from this webinar so far. Okay, so go to the chat box and be sure, I want you to name one thing that you're going to take away from this webinar thus far, if you can. Okay. And as you're typing these in, what we want you to know is that what Deb and I will take away from what you're doing is we will use this information to structure future webinars. So we're gathering quick data, quick information from you guys about what it is that you're going to walk away with. And so this allows us then to structure our webinars in the future. And so I think one of the things that you guys are saying right now, I love, Don, what you said is that, or Diane rather, that what you're doing already in the classroom can specifically be tied to APA goals and guidelines. And I think that that is so fantastic. We hope that you guys walk away with that, because it doesn't have to be something that is mind-bending. You are probably doing many things right now that's going to allow you to plug into this inclusion. And so this is all great, you guys. Thank you so much for this. One of the things that you can do is you can do either formative assessments, you can do summative assessments. I think because so many of us are using assessment for accreditation, we think it's important to consider including skills-oriented goals as well. Most of our career and technical programs already assess based upon skill-oriented goals. But it's not something that we always think about and do in our academic programs. So don't get too worried, because again, this doesn't have to be scary. You could do something like this formative assessment that we just showed you, just having you guys type in information. For us, this is going to help you monitor student learning. It's also going to give us feedback as instructors on ways to help improve our teaching and to help improve their learning. Again, we could use summative assessment. This, of course, is to evaluate the student's learning. So these are more of the high-stakes kinds of assignments like midterms, major papers, or final exams. But remember that summative assessments can be formative if we actually use those to influence our future classes. You can see that this example that we just did was a very simple way of gathering feedback. This can be done, again, in online sections. This can be done in hybrid sections or traditional sections. Yet how you implement these tasks will obviously depend on the type of class you teach or the size of class that you're teaching. Professors who teach large sections may want to deploy a survey, or you may want to do a simple chat or discussion board that would allow you to gather this information. While those of you who teach small sections could even require a one-on-one conference with a student. So any of these examples would actually allow you to meet the skills-based assessment in both a formative, or you could deploy some of these. You could deploy some of these examples in a application kind of summative assessment. I'm going to move back one because a couple of you didn't see the last slide here. So this particular slide was just mentioning ways that you could ask students to leave the class. Perhaps they have to write out on a piece of paper as their ticket out, name one way this, whatever you did, demonstrates whatever goal that you're trying to assess. Again, you could assess this in a summative kind of way on an actual high stakes exam or a written work. Again, using those homework exercises that have purpose, those that like the SpongeBob and Caillou example, perhaps you would rather do that in a homework kind of situation. And then one of my favorite things to do for students, Deb's doing this semester, is she actually assigns different pieces in her textbook for the students to be responsible for. So in the textbook that we're using this semester, we have connections, we have different perspectives, and so Deb actually tells each student, listen, you're going to be responsible for anything that's related to connections, or you're going to be responsible for anything that's related to evolutionary psychology, and you're responsible for contributing when that information comes up in the classroom. So these are all very basic ways that you can actually assess how well your students are doing on parts and pieces of their information and the APA goals and guidelines. So ultimately, what's important is that you're gathering the data to ensure that you are meeting these goals. And sometimes this comes, again, in the form of summative assessments or other times formative. But, you know, it doesn't have to be difficult. I know that I greatly appreciate Worth Publishers for making their test banks so aligned with the APA goals and outcomes. In our department here at Pikes Peak Community College, we are able to easily identify which goal we want to assess, and then we can plug into those questions that are aligned in the test bank to actually create summative assessments that we want to focus on with that goal because it does align so well. And so this kind of support from Worth actually makes these summative assessment pieces much easier for our department to manage.
So we have come to the end here with our webinar, and we hope that you've seen some new ideas about connections to everyday life and maybe thought about the connections that you already make with your students. We've given some ideas about incorporating skills, and we have also taken some ideas from you. We've given some great ideas. And then to just keep thinking about assessment and how to use assessment, which you already do, so that you're not reinventing the wheel, as someone said, and move forward with the new APA guidelines. We will be providing the PowerPoint, or Andrea will be providing the PowerPoint, which will include these website activities where we got the website links here, and also the references that we've used. And I believe Andrea will also share the PowerPoint as well. So I believe we can open up for questions now. Andrea, is that right?
Yes, we can now open for questions. Anyone who has a question, please type it into the chat box. If you'd prefer that we take you off of mute to ask your question yourself, you can use the raised hand icon. As a reminder, the chat box, if you don't see it on your screen right now, just hover over the green bar that says Viewing Deborah Licht's desktop and click the chat icon. If you wanted to raise your hand, click Participants. So you'd hover over the same bar, click Participants, and there'll be a little icon of a hand, which will allow you to raise your hand. And I did have one question that came in during while we were doing another activity, and this question was, do you have different introduction to psychology courses at your college? You mentioned that you mentioned a course that was for vocational students. Is that structured differently?
It is. We have two courses. We have a guaranteed transfer introductory psychology course for students who will be transferring to four-year institutions, but we also have a non-transferable course that's called Psychology in the Workplace, and it covers so many of these different skill issues, trying to relate them to the content of psychology. And that course, the workplace course, we get students from culinary arts, from automotive tech. Any of the career tech programs are welcome. The prerequisites are lower for that course. And again, because it's non-transferable, it is somewhat lower reading level than the transferable course. But we've had really great response from the career tech faculty saying they've appreciated that we can provide this content to students and provide practice to students that they just don't have time to do in their very packed courses that they have to meet certain standards.
Thank you.
We'd be happy to share the syllabus for that course and any other information if anyone's interested in that.
Great, thank you so much. If anyone wants that, when you receive your follow-up email from us, feel free to respond to that and ask for the syllabus. Okay, the next question was, what were the results of the Willard and Peterson 2011 study?
With the SpongeBob and the Caillou? Yeah.
What they found was that executive functioning, when it was tested immediately after watching the SpongeBob, was decreased, whereas for watching Caillou, or they had a third group that was just drawing, the executive functioning did not drop. And so that's what we talk with students about is, you know, what happens, this was just 9 minutes of watching SpongeBob, what happens after a couple of hours of sitting in front of SpongeBob. So it's executive functioning that we're looking at.
And then we also talk about the fact that Nickelodeon actually responded to this study because, of course, they don't want to have SpongeBob portrayed in such a negative light. They responded to the study saying that watching SpongeBob when you're 4 years old, that was not their target audience. So they responded by saying the target audience for their particular cartoon was a preteen kind of crowd. And so I think that that's one of the things that again, we bring this discussion back into a relevant kind of topic with students to talk about, one, should a 4-year-old be allowed to watch SpongeBob, and how many 4-year-olds are actually watching SpongeBob? And then in addition, we talk about those limitations to that study. So there were 60 participants, if I remember correctly, and all of them were from white middle-class families. And so anyway, so that's, so we get to have some lively discussion about just the limitations that were presented in that particular study as well.
Thank you. The next question is, what do you see as an effective way to promote psychological thinking or literacy across the campus?
Well, that's great. Well, one thing that we've done, and if you were at our last webinar, is that we've been doing a lot with mental health first aid, and so that's just a particular portion of psychological literacy, of course, but that's where we started by talking about mental health and stigma across our campus. We've had different opportunities to present information where we've been invited to Career Day, for example, at our college. We've done panels in an innovation panel that went from campus to campus. So whenever people ask us across the campus to do something related to psychology, we try to jump at that.
Great, thank you. So for the students who actually want to engage in employment utilizing psychology, how would you help them?
Well, we don't see that there's just a huge leap. I think when we're making this information relevant for the students, I think that is the purpose of this introductory psychology class, is really showing the students, whether they are a psychology major or not, that this information is relevant, and no matter what you do in your future career, it's important to be a good consumer of this information. And I think that that is what really speaks to those foundational goals of the APA guidelines, that we want to make sure that they are, in fact, being literate and good consumers of that information.
I think also because we're a two-year institution, we try our best to make good connections with our four-year institutions that most of our students are transferring to, and talk to our students about making appointments with the psychology faculty at the four-year institutions.
And Erin, I agree with you that increasing that literacy across the curriculum is very important and is connected to information literacy in general. And then he mentioned that anything that we can do to foster that is positive. And so I do agree with you. I think that just plugging this into overall information literacy, which is for most of us our general ed code or our outcome for our general educations, I think that that's just huge.
Okay, thank you. The next question that I have is, you mentioned that you had assessed students' understanding of correlation versus experiments, and now they are doing better. Can you talk about some of the activities that you use to help them learn this distinction?
Yeah, well, one of the things that we do here at Pikes Peak Community College is, once we did our departmental assessment and we learned that students struggle with this concept, we actually implemented this curriculum enhancement where we ask every instructor teaching an introductory psychology course to implement a curriculum enhancement. We give them a lot of flexibility in what they want to choose, but what we ask them to do is, in the last 4 weeks of the semester, to implement this curriculum enhancement. So again, the SpongeBob and Caillou experiment is a great way that we can emphasize that. Worth Publishers has some psych inquiry activities that give an example of experimentation and correlation. It's about a 10 to 15-minute activity that the student watches and participates in this activity, and then they go through and answer a couple of questions at the end of that. And I think some of the other things that students or that instructors are doing is that they actually bring in examples of experiments in the literature, and they bring in experiments of correlation. They talk again about those news headlines, and so they're all basic examples of activities that they can do to emphasize that. And so it's really nice to be able to demonstrate to the student that these headlines that they're reading in the media or hearing about on radio or television, while they're often presented as an experiment that shows causation, cause and effect, that it may actually be a correlation.
Great, thank you. We're going to go back to Q&A, but I know that some people have to leave right on time. So turn your attention back to your screen if you plan to get continuing education credits for this webinar. Our TLC program is approved by the American Psychological Association to sponsor continuing education for psychologists. After this webinar, I'm going to send out the quiz that you need to fill out in order to get continuing education credits. The code that it's going to ask for, write this down, is H0303. So these are zeros, so like March 3rd. Misty and Deb are both authors at Worth Publishers. There's no obvious conflict of interest in today's presentation. For more information about the continuing education credits, please email me at amissinio@worthpub.com, or just wait for the email to come in from us. Great, and I'll leave that on the screen, and then we'll turn our attention back to Misty Hull and Deborah Licht. The next question that I have is, do you think there is too much of a skills leap between Intro to Psychology to a lifespan course, for example?
I'm not sure what's meant by a skills leap. Is the questioner able to clarify that?
If that's your question and you're able to clarify it, type it in the chat box. Maybe for now we'll move on to the next one just to give them some time to clarify. The next question is, have you found that your students do better on certain assignments, especially APA papers, when you actually go over the rubric for the assignment?
Oh, definitely. Yes, actually just bringing that information and providing some clarity for the student definitely allows them to be more successful. I think they somehow hearing it and going over it just puts it in a better perspective for them to be able to be more prepared, I think.
Also, we have writing centers here where our students can go and get help with APA formatting, APA style, and I think that it also helps to give students the perspective from the instructor, not just from the writing center. So yeah, it definitely does help them.
Okay, I haven't received clarification on that other question yet. I asked the attendee if he would want me to take him off of mute, but I just want to make sure before doing that. But I have another question that's waiting. What have you done to sell to students the importance of these goals, application of theory / critical thinking, when all students want is to be taught to the test and who are allergic to thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we just try to trick them I mean, we certainly have in our syllabi that assessment is important, and we have the outcomes that we have for our department, but directly talking about these as these are the APA goals, I don't think we do that at an introductory psychology level. Would you agree?
Yeah, well, I think the other thing that we do is we talk a lot about reframe with them as well. And one of the things that I've really emphasized in my classroom is, listen, yes, we are going to have this assessment, but what I want to do is change your thinking about this assessment. You came in here knowing very little about the content of psychology. And so no matter what you get on your score, let's say you only get 75%. Well, you know 75% more now than you knew when you first came into the classroom. Do you want to have a 90 or 100%? Yes, that's where we hope to get you. But if we can just change the reframe a little bit to help them understand that maybe they didn't pass, but they at least knew 50%, that's a whole lot better than what they knew before they walked into the classroom. And so helping them get out of the mindset of I've failed or I've not succeeded has really helped my classroom, just letting the students know that try. And next time maybe you'll know 70% or 80 or 90 or 100%. So just reframing a little bit for them on the purpose of the information has helped tremendously.
Great, thank you. I don't have any other questions waiting. I have the one where we were looking for clarification. So the original, I don't know if I'm able to take the person off of mute though, but the question was originally, do you think that there is too much of a skills leap between intro to psychology to, for example, a lifespan course? The clarification I received was skill set including APA in presenting writing work.
I don't think so. I think we definitely target our writing for the students in our classrooms in many ways, so I think that, if I look at a nursing student and let's say we're talking about Maslow, I can ask them to write a paper or elaborate on how Maslow is going to impact their work as a nurse. And so we talk a lot about bringing those pieces to life in the careers that they hope to do. And so I think that if I'm understanding your question correctly, we don't see that there's too much of a skills leap. We actually see that there are some real foundational things that we do in introductory psych class that helps provide, I think, as Mary Beth Palmer-King said, a lot of framework for the lifespan class that we can build upon.
And I think we at least in Colorado, at the community college level, that the introductory psych class is required. It is a prerequisite for the human development class, and I believe that's not the case everywhere, but we find that the students do better if they've had that prerequisite course.
And I think that if you have a course that is not a prerequisite, if your lifespan course does not have an introductory psychology class as a prerequisite, spending some time in that first part of the semester really emphasizing being a good consumer of psychological information is going to be very valuable to continuing the semester being successful with those students. So we thank you guys so much for your participation and your interest in this webinar today. I know most of you have to get to class, as do Deb and I. So we wanted to say thanks again for all that you've done to participate. And for those of you who allowed us to read your comments and the two of you who allowed us to take you off of mute to participate, we are forever indebted to your participation.
You're the best class ever.
And thank you to you, Misty and Deb. This was a wonderful webinar. We really appreciate you doing this for us. We will be posting the recording, of course, for all of you. We'll send out an email, as we typically do afterwards, that will include the PowerPoint recording, the quiz for the continuing education credits. Also, some of you had requested the answers to some of the chat questions, so we'll include that too. You could always keep track of upcoming events on Faculty Lounge. I'll include that link, but you could see a screenshot of it here. Right when you log in, you could see the recordings we have and any upcoming events that you can sign up for. You can also keep track of Scientific American Psychology on Facebook. The name is just Scientific American :psychology, or Twitter, and our Twitter handle is SciAmPsychology. And there you can keep track of any activities or information about the book. So thank you, everybody, for attending. Thanks for staying a little late and for your wonderful questions. And thanks to you, Misty and Deb, again, for a fantastic presentation. Okay.
Thank you, guys. Bye.